Good morning, everyone. This is Kent Hullabar with Virginia State Golf Association. Just wanted to welcome everyone to week 3 of our virtual rules seminar. We're still set to start at 11, but just wanted to give everyone another couple minutes to log on here, and then we'll officially get started. All right, good morning, everyone. Once again, this is Kent Hullabar. I'm the Assistant Director of Championships and Golf Operations. Happy to have you all here for week 3 of our virtual Rules of Golf seminar. We have with me Amanda Kelly, who's new to the VSGA staff as a tournament manager. She will be monitoring any questions that you all have. Please be sure to use the chat feature for any questions, and we will do our best to either answer those directly in the chat feature or out loud. We do have different slides built in for the actual question. So if you want to wait until the end of a section to ask your question, then that would be great. But we'll go ahead and get started and do our best to explain this section, which we'll be talking about some free relief procedures. All right, I feel like these pictures and scenarios may be pretty familiar to everyone, but an abnormal course condition are any of these things. Animal holes, which is the bottom left picture. Ground under repair, which from the courses that you play or tournaments, the committee may be painting some of these not so good areas within white paint. The third picture, your classic immovable obstructions. This player is on a cart path, and the far right picture, temporary water. It can only be on the surface of the ground and something that is visible when you take your stance. So what is the nearest point of complete relief? I feel like the words complete relief are very key here. It's the estimated point where the ball would lie that is nearest to the ball's original spot, but not nearer to the hole than that spot. It's in a required area of the course where there is no interference from the condition from which relief is being taken. So you can see this player's ball lies what seems to be almost in the middle of the cart path. But this picture has helped us visually see that his direction of play and where the nearest point of relief might be on either side of that path. He can take relief if there's interference by the club, stance, swing, and line of play. And as you can see, his heels on the right portion of the picture are completely off the path, and on the left portion of the picture, the club is not going to have any interference from that swing. Now, from where this ball lies, the nearest point of complete relief states solely that the particular condition from which relief is being taken and may be in a location where there is interference from something else. So unfortunately, it is not necessarily the nicest point of relief, but the nearest point. So even though this player's heels are completely off the cart path and he is going to be taking his next stroke from within a tree, it's not the nicest point. This is the nearest point of complete relief. Relief is allowed when interference exists from the ball that is touching, that is in or on the immovable obstruction or the abnormal course condition. There's physical interference with the intended stance or intended swing, or on the line of play for putting green only. So we can break down these three pictures with the ball lying on this immovable obstruction on the far left picture, which looks to be a drain. The middle picture, the player's stance has interference from an immovable obstruction, most likely a cart path. And then the temporary water on the putting green that may be intervening on the line of play on the putting green only. There's three exceptions when relief would not be allowed. And correlating to the pictures, the ball is in a penalty area. So the top right picture, you can see that the ball is within the yellow line there. There's abnormal course conditions that is out of bounds, or it's clearly unreasonable to play the ball because of something other than the abnormal course condition, because you choose a club, a type of swing, stance, or direction of play that's clearly unreasonable. So we see the player in the bottom picture that's kind of stretching their stance a little bit more than should be necessary because their ball is within that bush and they're trying to convince someone that they have interference from this abnormal course condition, in this case, the cart path. And because he's stretching his stance, he's not going to be entitled to relief from that. When taking relief from an abnormal course condition in the general area, you must follow some particular steps. Must identify the reference point. It's the nearest point of complete relief. So in the top picture, it's indicating that this ball is within ground under repair. So the reference point is going to be just outside of that ground under repair. Should measure 1 club length from the reference point, which must still be in the general area, so no near the hole. So this picture straight from the book is measuring left or right, no near the hole. And when you drop the ball, it must land in and come to rest in the relief area. In the bottom picture, which is also straight from the book, you can see the direction of play in the top right-hand corner, and you can also see this player is right-handed with the feet placement. So from where the ball lies, P1 would be one relief option, and P2 would be a different relief option. So the shaded area is where the player must drop their ball. I should point out that the rules put limitations on where the nearest point of complete relief may be based on where your golf ball lies. So if your golf ball lies in the general area, complete relief should remain in the general area. If it's in the bunker, it should remain in the bunker. If it's on the putting green, it could be on, your relief could be on the putting green, but it could also be in the general area. And are there any quick questions before we move on to the next section?
Yeah, just one quick question about, if my relief option, say puts me under a tree, do I have to take relief? No, you don't have to take relief, especially if your nearest point of complete relief is what you're going to consider a worse condition off. You can always play the ball as it lies. You do not have to take the relief if you choose so.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, a good thing to point out. We watch LPGA and PGA Tour a lot, and the players are obviously great players, but they are really good at analyzing the situation and figuring out where's their dropping going to be. If it's not going to be in an ideal spot, they very well could consider playing that ball as it lies. But I do understand, they are making a lot of money for every swing that they take, and they're probably more likely to be okay scratching up a club where we may not be. Anything else before we move on real quick to embedded ball?
No, that was the only question.
Okay, cool. All right, embedded ball. I feel like this is something that we deal with a lot, and especially in the general area after a little bit of rain, the ball is a little bit more likely to become embedded. So when is a player's ball is embedded? When it's in its own pitch mark, made as a result of the player's previous stroke, where part of the ball is below the level of the ground. So I should point out, again, the pictures are straight from the book and do a good job of visually depicting what the words are trying to say. So the top two pictures, the ball's embedded. The ball does not need to touch soil, whereas the bottom right picture, the ball is nestled within the grass, but it is not below the surface of the ground. So top two pictures are embedded. Last picture, the ball is not embedded. A ball must be embedded in the general area. You're not going to get an embedded ball in the bunker, even though a lot of people try to say, oh, my ball's embedded in the bunker. We all know the term fried egg. That's not going to be recognized by the rules of golf. Embedded ball on the putting green may be a possibility. I feel like we see that from time to time. Most likely, though, it's the general area. It's going to be fairway and rough. But if the ball is embedded on the putting green, the player may mark the spot of the ball, lift and clean it, repair any damage the ball or caused by the ball's impact, and then do your best to replace the ball on its original spot. If the ball is embedded, from your tee shot in the general area, we'll call it the fairway, find that reference point again, like we talked about in a previous slide. And that spot is going to be directly behind the ball. You're going to once again use your club links that you've learned before in the previous seminars. Can't go any nearer the hole and measuring left or right. So you're going to drop it again within this relief area, this shaded area. The ball must land in and come to rest in this relief area. So I feel like even though we don't want to talk about how the rules were, the rules are very generous when talking about how you can take an embedded ball relief. I know that was quick, just a couple slides, but any quick questions about embedded ball?
None specifically about embedded ball. I do have one about relief stance. It's just kind of like how is the relief stance the ground club and then one club length. So your relief stance is, you find your point of your complete near relief, take that stance, set your club down, and then mark where the club is, and then you get one club length from there. That's where, and then that's considered your relief stance.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like that's something that may be confusing to some people. This is a recommendation on taking relief procedure. It's not a requirement that you do this. The rules really only care about getting the ball in the right spot. But if you were to do it step by step, you're going to determine where that nearest point of relief is with the club that you're most likely going to use to make the next stroke. And then you're measuring the one club length. And so I kind of breezed over the one club length, but that's defined as the longest club in your bag, and it cannot be a putter. So if you're using a long putter, that's not allowed. So pull out your driver when always measuring your relief area. But in this immovable obstruction or abnormal course condition relief procedure, it's not a requirement that you go step by step. It is just a recommendation. All right, let's see if we can touch on free relief by moving the interfering object. Okay, definitions. I kind of haven't touched on this either, but definitions are a great place to start when trying to learn a little bit more about the rules. We've talked about a few already, and in this one, loose impediments cover many different things, but it is any unattached natural object. And natural is key because we'll see with the definition of movable obstruction what the difference is. So think about any stones, loose grass, leaves, branches, sticks, unfortunately dead animals and their waste, worms, insects, similar animals that can be removed easily, in clumps of compacted soil. So going through the pictures, we've got a twig, we've got a leaf in the bunker, we've got various insects there. Believe it or not, a spider web, even though it may be attached, it's still going to be considered a loose impediment. And then that clump of compacted soil, most likely aeration plugs. So some special cases, sand and loose soil are not impediments. They are only being able to be moved when on the putting green. Dew, frost, and water are also not loose impediments. If we happen to be playing when we've had any snow or natural ice on the course, other than frost, so snow and just natural ice, they're either loose impediments or when on the ground, temporary water at the player's option. So that's basically saying that if it's temporary water, you could take relief like we described in an abnormal course condition relief, or if you want to treat it as loose impediments, you could just move that away. So as we saw in the previous slide, spider webs are loose impediments, even though they are attached to another object, in a live insect on a ball, as we can see in the bottom impediment. So without penalty, a player may remove that loose impediment anywhere on or off the course and may do so in any way. If you like the classic ways or just brushing them away, picking them up like the player in this picture, you could use your club or other equipment, maybe your towel, maybe your hat. You could get the people you're playing with to help you move them. Or believe it or not, you could break off a part of the loose impediment. Maybe it is a tree branch that has fallen, but you really just need to get relief from one of those little twigs. You can break off that twig. If a player's removable loose impediment does cause their ball to move, the ball must be replaced. So the word must to requirement must be replaced on its original spot, which if it's not known, just do your best to estimate it. If the moved ball has been at rest anywhere except on the putting green or on the teeing area. And unfortunately, if your removal of the loose impediment does cause your ball to move, you are going to be penalized one stroke. And just a reminder that the ball must be replaced. I think one thing that sticks out to me when thinking about this is a match I had a couple years ago in the US Junior. A player's ball came to rest in pine straw, kind of like the picture here, and it was also coming to rest against a pine cone. And the player did a great job of trying to move some of these pine needles away. The ball never moved, but if he were to move that pine cone, it was going to move. So he was very careful as to what he was willing to move and not move because he didn't want to. It's one stroke penalty. Any questions regarding removing loose impediments?
Yeah, we've got a couple questions here.
Okay.
The first one, going back to the embedded ball. If your ball's embedded on the putting green, but it's kind of on a slope, what do you do if you can't replace it in the same spot? So obviously you go through the process of marking your ball, replacing the divot from your ball, and then you place it on the original spot. But if it clearly isn't staying still, because it's on a slope, then you would find, the nearest point to that original spot where you can place the ball and have it not move. And then the other one is if a ball lands on a cart path and you want to take relief, do you have the option to choose either side of the cart path? So you may look at either side of the cart path, but you must take the complete relief that is closer to the ball. So if your ball, is more on the right side of the cart path, then you need to go off to the right side. You can't just go off to the left side, even if the left side's, fairway and the right side is pine straw in the trees, you have to go off to the right side because it is closer to that side of the cart path. You can't just choose either side. So.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's well explained. Yeah, I think it's a confusing thing. Everyone wants to go to where they're going to have a clear shot, but the rules clearly indicate that you must go to the nearest point of relief. So we always joke it's, the nearest, not the nicest. So it will be unfortunate if you have to drop it near a bush, but it is what it is. And sometimes I hate that phrase, but the rules are pretty cut and dry with that. All right, let's talk about some movable obstructions. Again, a definition straight from the book. So what we talked about, loose impediments being natural, movable obstructions, anything artificial that can be moved with reasonable effort and without damaging the obstruction on the course, except if the object is defined by the committee as an integral part of the, or an integral object, a boundary object, or an immovable obstruction. So going back to movable, we've got two examples at the top two pictures, a towel and a rake, things that we probably drop and our ball could come to rest against at any moment. The bottom pictures would be the things we're not getting relief from. I'm sorry, the things that are not movable obstructions. So the integral object, this retaining wall or bulkhead, whatever we want to call it, the middle picture, the out of bounds stakes, in the far right picture, the immovable obstruction that you still are getting relief from, is just not movable. So without penalty, a player may remove the movable obstruction anywhere on or off the golf course and may do so in any picture and the rake that is within this this bunker. If a player's ball moves while they're removing a movable obstruction, there is no penalty, and the ball must be replaced on its original spot, which again, if it's not known, must be estimated. I think one thing to point out real quick is the loose impediment penalty versus the movable obstruction. That loose impediment is natural. It's meant to be on the golf course. So the rules and its premise want you to play the ball as it lies. But when talking about movable obstructions, now we're talking about things that are not natural to the course, such as this rake in this picture. The rules are going to give you a break because the rake is not really supposed to be a part of the course. And so they want to just give you no penalty, but still want you to play your ball from the original spot. So you see the ball at rest against the rake gets moved, thus the ball moves, must replace the ball on its original spot. So relief when a ball is in or on a movable obstruction anywhere on the course except on the putting green. The player may take free relief by lifting the ball, removing the movable obstruction, and dropping the ball on the original spot or another ball in this relief area. So the picture indicating that the ball looks like to be in the fairway on a towel. The ball never had a home. It's not touching the golf course. So we don't want to have you play the ball from the towel. So we're going to have you go ahead and lift the ball, move the towel out of the way, and then drop the ball in that relief area. Same type of thing. You're trying to drop it where that ball was, but we're going to give you the one club length relief area. Jumped ahead a little bit, but this is that same type of relief procedure that has been explained before. So a few key things: that you're dropping it within one club length either direction. It's not near the hole. The ball must land in and come to rest in that relief area. All right, when relief when ball is in or on a movable obstruction on the putting green. So now we get a bigger picture of what that girl was looking at before, and we can see it looks to be that her ball is on that towel on the putting green. So this player may take free relief by lifting the ball, removing the movable obstruction, this towel, and now placing the original ball or another ball on the estimated spot right under where the ball was at rest on the movable obstruction. I think it's key to point out that now we're placing it. We've made it to the putting green, that special place that we all want to get to, and the rules are going to cut you a break there. Instead of dropping as we did in the general area, we're now going to place the ball because you've made it to this spot. We want to really condense down where you're putting the ball. So do your best to put it right underneath that towel. That was kind of quick too with movable obstructions. Are there any questions?
Yeah, we've got a couple more questions. The first one, so your ball lies in the general area against a pine cone, and moving that pine cone would cause the ball to move, but your stance is on the cart path. You get Yes, you get relief from the cart path because your stance is on the cart path. So again, your nearest point of complete relief would be where your stance is not on the cart path. So in that instance, the pine cone shouldn't matter unless, when you take relief, where you drop your ball, it becomes a different instance. But yes, you do get relief for your stance off the cart path. And another one, can you move red or yellow penalty stakes if it interferes with your stance or swing? Yes, these are considered movable obstructions. So you are allowed to move stakes if they interfere.
Yeah, a couple good questions. The first one, I would feel like it's kind of a strategy thing. Do you feel like you can get a club on that ball that's at rest against the pine cone? Feel free to play the ball as it lies. But yeah, as you said, Amanda, to be also able to take relief from the cart path. And stakes, those are movable obstructions, and the only ones that are fixed would be those white stakes that we traditionally see as out of bounds. All right, moving into one of our last sections here. Your ball is on the putting green and it's helping with play. So if your ball is on the if your ball is on the putting green, helping play only applies to a ball at rest on the putting green and not anywhere else on the course. If a player reasonably believes that a ball on the putting green might help anyone else's play, such as serving as a possible backstop near the hole, the player may mark the spot of the ball and lift it if it's their own ball. Or if it belongs to another player, you could require that other player to mark the spot and lift the ball. The lifted ball must be replaced on its original spot. In stroke play, a player who is required to lift the ball may play first instead, just to get out of the way. But if two or more players agree to leave a ball in place to help any player, and that player then makes a stroke with the helping ball left in place, each player who agreed gets the general penalty. So in stroke play would be 2 strokes. Now we're moving into a ball anywhere interfering with play. The meaning of interference by another player's ball is interference exists when another player's ball, is at rest. It might interfere with the player's area of intended stance or area of intended swing. It is on or close to the player's line of play, so that given the intended stroke, there's a reasonable chance the player's ball in motion could hit that ball, or is close enough even to distract the player when making a stroke. So some mental interference. And one of the examples I tend to think about a lot are 2 balls close to each other in a bunker. You're going to end up splashing a lot of sand out of there. So you could be moving that, it's interfering. If a player reasonably believes that another player's ball anywhere on the course might interfere with the player's own play, the player, that's the one that's going to make the stroke, may require that other player to mark the spot and lift the ball. And then that ball must not be clean. So you might see a lot of players pick the ball up in between 2 fingers and just hold it off to the side, indicating, I'm not cleaning this ball and I have no intent to. They're just trying to be extra careful, brain fart, and throwing it back in their pocket. But that ball must be replaced on its original spot. Again, in stroke play, the player required to lift may play first instead. When relief is allowed from an interfering ball, if the other person does not mark the spot before lifting the ball or cleans the ball when not allowed, unfortunately going to get a stroke penalty. The player is not allowed to lift the ball under this rule based only on the player's own belief that the ball might interfere with another player's play. They have to be invited into to lift. They must be asked to lift. And just a reminder that you don't have to be asked when the balls are at rest on the putting green. I think this picture is most likely in the fairway. I think I see a few divots between or behind that player's foot. If the player lifts their ball when not required to do so, they will get a one-stroke penalty. A few extra notes about this when trying to figure out helping or interfering. This also applies to a ball marker, which I feel like we do all the time. We just casually move a ball marker, not thinking more in depth about it, but helping or interfering ball markers are treated just slightly different than golf balls. When we're dealing with a ball marker, we already have the ball that is lifted and no longer in play. So this part of the rule is a little less restrictive than with golf balls. If a ball marker is in a position to either help or interfere with play, you may move the marker if it's your own, and if it's not yours, you may require the owner to move the marker out of the way that you would have a helping or interfering ball lifted. So what to do when a ball or a ball marker is helping or interfering? To lift a ball that is helping or interfering with play, you must follow. You should mark the ball prior to lifting it. Again, not cleaning it unless it was on the putting green, that special place that the rules are going to allow you to do a little extra things. And do make sure to replace your ball on the same spot. To move a ball marker, I think this is what we do all the time. So to move a ball marker, there's helping or interfering. Move the ball marker by measuring to a new spot. Traditionally, I think you would do this with more putter head lengths. Make sure to replace either the ball back on the correct original spot or the ball marker back in the spot. So the rules are not going to require you to replace the ball marker first. As long as that ball gets back in the right spot, they are good with that. Any final questions about this section or anything else that we've covered?
Yeah, I've got a couple about marking balls here.
Okay.
One is, are you always required to mark your ball when on the green? Correct me if I'm wrong, Kent, but no, you're not always required.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're not required to. I think this is also a strong recommendation to mark your ball. I think you're going to want to do that if you have a slippery slope on a green. Maybe it's a windy day. You don't want your ball to be blown further away from the hole. So I think it's probably more strongly recommended than not. And I think one thing to point out too is that you cannot putt with your ball marker in place.
And then another one is, can a player mark and lift another player's ball? This is only allowed, I believe, in match play. Like if it's your partner's ball, you can mark and lift your partner's ball in match play. But in stroke play, and if the player, I think, specifically asks you to do that, you can, but you can't just mark it for them.
Correct. Yeah. One thing to point out there that if I ask Amanda to mark and lift her ball and she refuses, it would result in the general penalty. So you can't just go up and mark someone else's ball, but I can require Amanda to mark hers.
That was all the questions we had there, Kent.
Okay, great. Well, it's a little bit of a shorter section and seminar than the previous 2 weeks. I wanted to point out that if you go to the VSGA website at vsga.org And then to the top, there's several different options, one of them being Learn. Under the Learn tab, there's educational seminars. For the previous 2 weeks and for this seminar and for next week's, these will be recorded and we will put those links up there. So I invite you to go to that site uh, to listen and watch the previous recordings, or to come back to this recording for a little review. We can certainly stay on for a few more minutes, and if Amanda wants to put that link into the chat feature, maybe that will help. Also wanted to point out that next week we'll be covering penalty relief. So that's the penalty area under Rule 17, stroke and distance relief, ball lost or out of bounds, provisional ball under Rule 18, and then unplayable ball under Rule 19. So hopefully you all go through Rules 101 and brush up on that, and we'll have a review next Tuesday at 11 o'clock and again at 6. Well, like I said, we'll stay on for another couple minutes here, see if any other questions come through, but definitely appreciate you all being a part of this, and we'll hopefully see you next week.